My name is Anna. I'm 32. I'm not who they think I am. And I have no idea where I am right now. I woke up to light, soft, morning light, far too perfect. The room smelled expensive. A mix of fresh peonies, coffee, and something else, something unfamiliar. Like everything here. At first, I didn't realize I wasn't home. Or rather, it took far too long to understand this wasn't my home. Pastel sheets freshly ironed. Walls in creamy tones with subtle gold trim. On the bedside table, an open book. I picked it up. The Psychology of Intimacy. Author unknown. Neatly scribbled in the margins, a woman's handwriting. Page 46, discuss with Dima. Who the hell is Dima? I sat up. I was wearing a white nightgown, thin, almost weightless. Definitely not mine. I'd never wear something like this. Too delicate, too, not me. My gaze dropped to my hand. A ring. Wedding ring. With a diamond. Elegant. Subtle. Obviously expensive. But I'm single. I was single. I'm sure. Wasn't I? My heart started to beat, dull and heavy, like a fist pounding on a locked door. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up. My body felt unfamiliar. Not with fear, but with dissonance. As if I'd only just inhabited it after a long absence. The house was perfect. Designed. Like something out of a glossy lifestyle magazine. Wooden floors creaked just right, softly, cozily. Black and white art prints lined the walls. Somewhere in another room, a clock ticked, measuring time that didn't belong to me. I stepped into the hallway. Morning sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, casting delicate patterns on the floor. Everything here felt too familiar for a place I'd never seen before. And that's when I saw them. The photographs. Arranged neatly on a mirrored vanity in silver frames. In all of them me. With a man. Tall. Confident. A bit of stubble, storm-colored eyes. We were at the beach. In the mountains. Laughing in a kitchen. Kissing. In one photo, I wore a wedding dress, veil dancing in the wind. In another, I held a newborn in my arms. I looked happy. Too happy. And far too not me. My chest tightened. I picked up one of the frames. My fingers trembled. What is this? A dream? A prank? Some twisted joke? I've never been married. I don't have kids. I lived in St. Petersburg, in an old apartment with a leaky radiator and neighbors who smoked in the stairwell. I drank cheap coffee, worked freelance as an editor, wrote articles about how systems break people. I went to protests. I was someone else. But this world, this house, wasn't just different. It was warm. Too warm. As if I were a shadow of a woman who truly belonged here. I turned toward the mirror. Smooth skin. Even complexion. A smile lingering in the corners of my mouth that didn't feel like mine. I looked better than I remembered myself. As if I'd been improved. And staring at my own reflection, I said out loud, "My name is Anna. I'm 32. And I have no idea whose life this is." That was the moment I started looking for answers. I had no idea that the answers would be far more terrifying than the questions. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the System. The house didn't fight me. It welcomed me. Drawers slid open easily. Cabinets weren't locked. Files, passwords, keys, they all yielded. As if I were exactly who this place believed I was. There were 2 computers in the study. Sleek. Minimalist. 1 laptop, 1 desktop. Both logged in under the same name. Anna Mironova. That was me. At least according to them. The desktop was filled with folders named Fund Reports, Event Photos, Donor Letters. I opened one. A video of me, my face, my voice, thanking contributors to something called the Light of Hope Foundation. I was smiling, speaking fluently, passionately, about helping children in crisis. My hands moved with conviction. I looked like a woman who had spent years building something meaningful. But I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. The laptop was synced with my social media accounts. Facebook. Instagram. Even Twitter, still active. There I was again, posing at charity galas, giving TEDx-style talks, traveling with my husband, to places I'd only dreamed of. Iceland. Florence. Kyoto. 10 years of posts. Photos. Stories. Captions that sounded like me, but too polished, too curated. The kind of me I'd create if I wanted the world to envy a version of myself I didn't believe in. My inbox was full. Emails from board members. Press requests. Happy birthday notes from people I didn't know, addressed to someone I clearly wasn't. But the most chilling part? All the dates lined up. Every single message, every image, every thread, they went back 10 years. As if this version of me had never not existed. And yet, I remembered. I remembered noise. The city. The hunger of truth. I remembered chasing stories at midnight. Voice recorder tucked into my coat, always a step ahead of the silence. I remembered my name as Anna Volkova, not Mironova. I remembered writing about the vanishing, about the people who disappeared without a trace. I remembered a man in a gray coat who always stood too close. I remembered fear. Real fear. I remembered being alone, but right. Now, everything around me screamed the opposite. I stepped outside, heart pounding, expecting something, anything, to reveal the lie. A glitch. A flaw. A mistake. But the world outside the house was even more convinced of its own truth. The house stood at the edge of a perfectly kept road, lined with birches and red-roofed cottages. Birds chirped. Wind whispered through the trees like nothing had ever been wrong here. A neighbor, middle-aged, kind-eyed, waved from her porch. "Anna. Good morning," she called. "How's your shoulder?" I paused. "My shoulder?" I waved back stiffly. "Better. Thank you." She nodded, satisfied, and returned to watering her roses. She knew me. Not vaguely. Personally. Another man jogged by with his retriever. "Afternoon, Mrs. Mironova. Dmitri at work already?" I nodded, barely managing a smile. "Dmitri. My husband." The man in the photos. I had no idea where he was. Or who he really was. I walked farther. Every house felt familiar in a way that terrified me. As if a whole life had been installed around me. One I could walk through, interact with, belong to, but never truly remember building. Back inside, I stood in the kitchen, sunlight pouring across the marble counter, and whispered to myself, "This life, it's airtight. Seamless. Manufactured." And somewhere deep inside a small voice answered, "You're not the first. And you won't be the last." Chapter 3. The room they forgot to erase. It started with a draft. Not the kind that slips through old windows or sneaks under a door, but something colder. Subtler. A breath from the bones of the house itself. I was walking past the hallway closet when I felt it, an unnatural chill brushing across my ankles. I paused, opened the door. Coats. Boots. The usual. Except the floor. A faint seam between the tiles. A shadow that didn't belong. I knelt down, pulled gently, and the corner of the floorboard lifted with barely any resistance. There was a handle. My breath caught in my throat. The staircase beneath creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust clung to the railing. The air was dry and stale, like forgotten breath. At the bottom, a metal door. No lock. Just wait. It opened inward with a low groan. And the moment it did, I felt something tighten in my chest, like the world above me had sealed shut, and I was crossing into someplace that didn't want to be remembered. The room was small, dimly lit by a single hanging bulb, and insane. One entire wall was covered in newspaper clippings, articles in different languages, photos, names, headlines like, "Another activist gone." No trace of investigative journalist found. Memory experiments or mental illness? Red thread connected them. Pinned lines like a spider's web. In the center, a photo of me. Not the polished, elegant version. But the real me. Hair tied back. Tired eyes. Holding a microphone. I stumbled backward. My foot struck something. A crate. Taped shut. I opened it. Inside flash drives. Dozens. Labeled in handwriting I knew was mine. And next to them, a voice recorder. Already playing. If you're hearing this. I froze. That voice. My voice. But rougher. Less controlled. Real. Then they got to you. They wiped you. They built the perfect lie. And now you're living it. A long pause. You're not crazy. This isn't a dream. You were Anna Volkova. You were chasing them. You got too close. You saw something. And they rewrote you. My skin turned to ice. I pressed stop. I couldn't breathe. Who were they? What had I seen? There were more recordings. Files with titles like The Project, Day Before the Disappearance, Do Not Trust Him. I picked one at random. My voice again breathless. You have to fight it. Everything they gave you is a cage with flowers. Tear it down. Don't believe his eyes. Don't trust the comfort. It's all synthetic. Static. Watching you. I dropped the recorder. My hands were shaking. Had they overwritten my life? Was everything upstairs, every photo, every conversation, every neighbor, just a performance? And then the most terrifying thought of all. What if I had agreed to it? What if some part of me had chosen to forget? I backed out of the room, up the stairs, sealing the hatch behind me with shaking fingers. I stood in the hallway listening. The house hummed around me like nothing had changed. But I had. I was no longer safe in the dream. Because now I knew it had been written. Chapter 4. The man who loved me perfectly. For days I watched him. Dmitri. My husband. My stranger. He moved through the house like someone who belonged, not just to the space, but to me. He cooked. Smiled at me in the mornings. Kissed my forehead with the kind of quiet intimacy that should have made me melt. But it didn't. It terrified me. Because he was perfect. Too perfect. Like someone performing love from memory, rehearsed, clean, optimized. No rough edges. No tension. No reality. I started to count the patterns. How he always placed the cutlery symmetrically. How he looked at me for exactly 5 seconds before speaking. How his responses were never surprised, never unsure, always programmed kindness. It wasn't human. It was flawless. And that's what made it horrifying. One night, I pretended to sleep. I listened as he left the bed. His steps were soft but measured, descending the stairs with unnatural precision. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. He didn't see me. I stood in the shadows of the hallway as he opened the closet door, lifted the panel, and disappeared into the floor. I counted my heartbeats. Then I followed him into the dark. The secret room looked different in his presence. No longer dusty, no longer abandoned. The bulb was on. The wall of clippings had been rearranged. There were new photographs pinned now, recent ones. Of me, wearing the white nightgown, sitting in the garden, laughing at the kitchen table. And then he did something I wasn't ready for. He walked to the console in the corner, inserted a drive, pressed play. His voice came through the speakers. Project Echo Final Phase. Subject 17A shows full adaptive integration. Emotional alignment with assigned partner, 98%. No memory bleed. No deviation. He paused. There was a rustle of papers. Recommendation. Extend simulation. Monitor for anomalies. In case of breach, apply Protocol 7. My breath caught. A sharp sound escaped me. Dmitri froze. He turned slowly, eyes locking with mine. Not surprised. Not guilty. Just calm. Like this too had been anticipated. He stepped toward me. Anna, he said gently. You shouldn't be here. I backed away. What is this? Who am I? What the hell is Project Echo? He didn't raise his voice. Didn't panic. Just studied me with that same maddening warmth. You were broken, he said. You asked to forget. And we made that possible. I shook my head. No. I was a journalist. I was investigating. He cut me off with something that chilled me more than anything else. You were dying, he said softly. From the inside. The trauma. The obsession. The paranoia. You begged for a second life. A clean one. One with peace. Silence stretched between us. And then he whispered. We gave it to you. Something fractured in me then. Not pain. Not fear. And I remembered. I hadn't come here for comfort. I had come for truth. Even if it was the last thing they let me have. Chapter 5. The Memory Market. I ran. I didn't look back. Not at the house. Not at him. Not at the lie they built around me. I ran until my legs ached and my breath came in ragged bursts. Until the perfect streets gave way to gravel. then to silence, then to steel and shadows. By morning, I had crossed the city line, and by nightfall, I was breaking into a place that shouldn't exist anymore. The Institute for Neural Sciences and Cognitive Restructuring. It had been shut down 5 years ago, or so the public believed. I remembered the name from somewhere deep in my bones. A long-lost article draft, a redacted file, and then I saw it. Subject 17A/shells, A. My hands trembled as I pulled it down. Inside pages, footage, transcripts, scans of my brain, dozens of interviews. Surveillance photo. Not of Anna Mironova, of Anna Schultz. Me. No Perls. No Cheretigalas. No Dmitri. Instead, a woman with tired eyes and a hoodie pulled tight. Code on her screen. Anonymous Forum. Burned passports. A hacker. A whistleblower. And the most damning headline clipped inside. Cyberactivist Anna Schultz exposes global memory harvesting network. Below it, handwritten in red ink. Neutralized. Stage 1 complete. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. 10 years ago, I had uncovered something monstrous. A secret market where memories were stolen, edited, bought and sold. Memories of joy, pain, childhood, grief, identity. The powerful paid to forget. The broken paid to become someone new. And people like me who threatened to expose it were simply erased. They hadn't killed me. They did something worse. They made me believe I was happy. A final file, marked confidential/internal use only. I opened it. Test subject 17A has reached stable reintegration. No residual identity bleed detected. Memory overwrite successful. Experimental life construct has produced measurable emotional regulation, docility, and internalized compliance. Subject does not recall prior exposure to organization echo activity. I turned the page. The last line wasn't a note. It was a sentence. An epitaph. Erased but breathing. I left the archive before dawn. The air outside tasted different. Thin. Clean. Terrifying. Because now I knew. They hadn't rewritten me to save me. They'd done it to bury me. To turn their greatest threat into their most convincing lie. And for 10 long years I had played my part beautifully. Chapter 6. The Life I Buried. I returned just before midnight. The house looked the same. Perfect. Still. Silent. Like nothing had ever been broken. But I had changed. I no longer belonged here. And maybe I never did. He was waiting for me in the kitchen. Dmitri. Not startled. Not angry. Just waiting. As if he'd known I would come back. As if he'd seen this scene play out before. I know what you did to me, I said. My voice was sharp. Cold. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. Like a teacher evaluating a student's long-delayed epiphany. You found the archive, he said simply. Not a question. A confirmation. I stepped closer. You erased me. Turned my life into a stage set. You turned me into your experiment. Your pet project. His eyes didn't waver. We gave you peace. I laughed. Or tried to. It came out cracked and bitter. I want the truth. And that's when he said it. Anna, you already had it. Once. You were given a choice. After everything you exposed, after what happened, you had to disappear. I stared at him, pulse thudding in my ears. You weren't just a hacker. You were an accomplice. Whether you meant to be or not. Your leak led to the death of a man. An informant you unknowingly exposed. You were facing trial. Prison. He stepped closer. No anger. No judgment. Just brutal clarity. You came to us. You asked for this. Memory erasure in exchange for immunity. A new identity. A quiet life. One you'd never question. Silence. A low hum in my skull. Like my mind was tearing itself apart. No. Iwisparat. You're lying. He didn't argue. He just stepped aside. There's one more file. Upstairs. In the study. The screen flickered when I turned it on. My face appeared. Not the polished version. Not the housewife. The real one. Pale. Exhausted. Haunted. I looked straight into the lens. If you're watching this, then you broke the illusion. And that means you also broke the deal. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. I know you'll want to fight it. You'll say they brainwashed you. That it was all manipulation. But it wasn't. You asked for this. You begged for it. And now you're choosing to remember what you couldn't live with. A long pause. A flicker of something. Regret? Pride? I couldn't tell. The truth is, forgetting was the most honest thing I ever did. The screen went black. I sat there for what felt like hours. Everything in my body screamed to escape. To run. To expose them. But deeper inside, something else stirred. The part of me that had made the choice. The part that knew some truths are too heavy to carry forever. So I stayed there, watching the morning creep through the window. And for the first time since I woke up in this house, Chapter 7, The Quiet Between Versions. I didn't leave. Not that night. Not the next. Not because I trusted him. Or them. But because I didn't know where me ended anymore. Every room I walked through now felt layered. Not just a set, but a trap of intention. Each object placed not to deceive, but to keep me comfortable. And that was the cruelest trick of all. Comfort wasn't peace. It was anesthesia. Dmitri didn't mention the file again. He didn't ask what I remembered, or what I planned to do. He moved through the house like always, perfect timing, perfect posture. He made me tea the way I liked it. He spoke softly. He didn't lie. Not anymore. He didn't need to. Because now I knew. And that made his presence more unbearable than any secret. Some mornings I stared at the front door, keys in hand. Other mornings I walked the edge of the garden, where the security perimeter was too subtle to be seen but could be felt, like a buzzing under the skin, a digital fence woven into the soil. They hadn't locked me in. They'd made me believe there was no reason to leave. On the 7th day, I walked into the study, not to search, but to sit, to look. The photo frames were still there. The version of me laughing at a rooftop dinner party, holding a baby, riding a bicycle in Provence. This was the life someone thought I'd want. Worse, maybe it was the life I had wanted, when I was too tired to keep fighting. The door behind me creaked open. I can remove it again, Dmitri said. I didn't turn around. What? The truth, he said, stepping into the room. We can reprocess your memory, reseed the sequence. You'll wake up again next week. You'll believe it's real. It'll feel new. Like this never happened. I turned to face him. His eyes were soft. Not manipulative. Just offering. I almost said yes. Not because I believed him. But because I wanted to. Because the truth was exhausting. And remembering hurt more than forgetting ever had. Later that night, I wrote my name on a piece of paper. Anna Volkova. Anna Schultz. Anna Mironova. Each version of me stacked like ghosts. I left it on the desk and walked outside. The sky was black velvet. Stars blinking above a world that hadn't changed, even if I had. I crossed the garden barefoot. Wind brushed my face. A sensor light clicked on, casting shadows behind me. I stood at the edge of the perimeter. And for the first time, I stepped through it. There was no alarm. No shock. No drones. Just a gate that opened because no one had ever expected me to use it. Because the real prison was choice. I didn't run this time. I walked. Slowly. Like someone who was no longer rushing to escape, but ready to begin. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know who I was going to be. But this time, when the world asked for a version of me, I would write it myself. Chapter 8. The Unwritten City. Cities feel different when you don't know who you are. Every street becomes a question. Every window an echo. And every face you pass might have once known you, or rewritten you. I arrived in a place that didn't welcome or resist me. It simply existed. Gray skies. Train horns. Vetbafement. No one here smiled too easily. That helped. I checked into a hostel under no name at all. Paid in cash. Slept with my bag under the pillow. I didn't speak unless I had to. Each night, I took out the flash drive I'd stolen from the archive. The one labeled Second Failures. Internal use only. I hadn't dared open it. Not yet. But it pulsed in my pocket like a second heart. On the 3rd day, I sat at a cracked cafe table and opened a terminal window. I wasn't sure my old skills would still live in my fingers. But they did. Muscle memory never forgets. Not like people do. Lines of code welcomed me like old friends with haunted eyes. By evening, I had rerouted a signal through 5 countries, accessed a buried node, and found a backdoor they forgot to seal. Welcome back AS. 9 unviewed logs. Last access, 3,769 days ago. I stared at the date. 10 years. 10 years since Anna Schultz had touched this system. She had locked it behind everything she feared. Now I was back. And I was the fear. The logs weren't reports. They were names. 17 of them. Each with a short description. Subject 3B. Unrecovered. Subject 9F. Reprogrammed high instability. Subject 11C. Terminated after psychological fracture. Subject 17A. Compliant. Integrated. Monitored. I felt sick. One of the names, Subject 14D, had a note beside it. Anna knew her. Watch for re-emergence. I clicked. A face filled the screen. Lena. My old contact. The girl with sharp eyeliner and a voice like steel. The one who helped me decrypt the original Echo servers. The one I'd trusted. The one I'd assumed was dead. But she wasn't. The file said she was in process. Not erased. Just waiting. I closed the laptop. Around me, people drank coffee. Argued. Laughed. No one knew a ghost had just resurfaced. But I knew. And someone else probably did too. I stood up, feeling weight return to my body. This wasn't over. It wasn't even close. They had taken me, remade me, buried me in bliss. Now, I was coming back. Not to be who I was, but to find the others. To pull them from the perfect lives built on lies. To ask the same question no one else dared. What did they make you forget? Chapter 9. The Edge of Remembering. I found her in Prague. It had taken weeks of digging, rerouted signals, whispered messages to people I hoped still owed me something. Most of them didn't reply. But one did. A name. A cafe. 1 hour only. I arrived early. Waited. Back to the wall. Burner phone on silent. A tiny flash drive hidden inside my boot. And then she walked in. Lena. Same sharp jawline. Hair shorter. Eyes quieter. She looked at me. Not with surprise, not with joy. With recognition. And fear. We didn't speak until the waitress left the second coffee. Lena didn't touch hers. You should have stayed gone, she said softly. I didn't respond. You made it out, she continued. You were clean. They gave you a life. And you came back? I didn't choose that life, I said. She leaned closer. Yes, you did. I froze. She nodded. We all did, Anna. You, me, the others. Echo wasn't just punishment. It was a bargain.